Thank you, everyone. We are back in public session. I apologize for the delay. We got caught up in executive session for a little longer than we anticipated, but thank you for waiting. At this time, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. So we have some special presentations tonight. First on deck our accounting firm with the audit presentation for last year. So ready?
Good evening. Thank you for having us here today. I'm Brian Coe. I'm a manager at Nisavacia. I'm here with Mon Lee, partner on your account. I believe you all have summaries of the fund balance for general fund for the year. So I'm just going to briefly go over that for you. Okay. So your total fund balance at the end of 23 was almost 9.8 million. That's compared to 11.2 at the end of 2022 fiscal year. So that's a change of a reduction of 1.4 million, which you had anticipated in the budget. Encumbrances were reduced by about 1.7. Capital reserves increased by almost $1 million. Maintenance reserve was maintained, and your current year excess surplus, which is to be used in the fiscal year 25, stayed at 200,000. Unemployment compensation reserve increased slightly. We get to close out your books real quick. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We appreciate, again, also your hard work here. One more time, is there any questions at all about the audit that any board members have, or these fine people go home? Okay. Well, again, thank you again. Appreciate the hard work, and we'll see you next year.
Good night. Thank you.
With that, we're going to move on to our second presentation of the night, our own Dr. Cullis, whenever you're ready. We decided a couple of the lights off, right?
Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to present our NJSLA results for the 22-23 school year. I have analyzed the results in multiple ways. For the first slide, this is a comparison of the district score to the state score. So you can see on the left column, the district percentage of proficiency. So that would be students that score a 4 or 5. And then the comparative to the state score next to it. The first columns in blue are ELA, and the second in the pink colors are for math. I have highlighted a few particular items. The most exciting piece of data for me was 5th grade at 81% proficient. I want to remind you that this particular grade, we have 5 co-teach classes and 3 resource centers with the percentage over 50% with students with additional needs. And so the fact that the highest scores in the district came from this grade, I'm just incredibly proud of the teachers and the students of how hard they worked to be able to achieve the proficiency level at that rate, and much higher than the state average. The 2 columns on the right, you'll see is our math percentage. So our highest is in our 3rd and our 6th grades. I want to make special note of that because last year we started a new coaching style where our math coach would spend an intensive year with 2 grades, which was 3rd and 6th grade, just spending every day in their classroom, coaching them, changing the curriculum, teaching new strategies, working directly with students. And it's exciting to see that the 2 grades that we started with were the 2 highest. So I do think that this method is really working. This year, our coach, Jen Conforti, is working with 4th and 7th grade. So I hope to see those same results for next year. This comparison is from our Denville 22 scores to our Denville 23 scores. So this is grade to grade. So it's the same teachers, but not the same students. So it's not the same cohort of students, it's just the same grade level. So you can compare across in terms of maybe how teachers are performing, but not necessarily how that student cohort is performing. The highest then, again, just pointing out our 6th grade had a significant improvement, and in math, those 2 particular grades, again, 3rd and 6th. This is our cohort analysis. If you follow the color, it will indicate how did that group of students do when they were in 3rd grade compared to when they were in 4th grade, and so on. So just match the colors. That's the same group of students. Different teachers, different content, different test, but the same group of students. What I've noticed for the decade before we had the reset after the pandemic is that we seem to notice that ELA, we grew, started the lowest at 3rd grade, and then 5th grade would be the highest. And then we'd start out the low again in 6th grade, where the test actually changed. The style of the test is different. 6th grade started out low again and then built its way up to 8th grade. With math, I've always noticed that we started our highest in 3rd grade, or this was before pandemic, at 3rd grade, and then each year as the content gets more sophisticated, more and more students would have difficulty reaching that proficiency level. So it somewhat is following that path. We have a few anomalies with that pattern, but do point out that our 6th grade ELA, who was last year was their first year doing workshop, increased quite a bit in ELA. And then you can notice our lower areas in math was our 6th grade cohort going to 7th grade, and then our 3rd grade going to 4th grade. Again, remember 4th grade and 7th grade are the 2 grades that we've targeted for this year. So those 2 cohorts are really the area we're focusing on now. We haven't done much reporting out of science because they really still are trying to align the new standards with the test. I think it's probably pretty shocking. It used to be on a 300 scale, and how different it is across the state since they have changed the standards and the assessment. So I tried to go back to the students that we had. So we only had the 8th graders at that time. So in 2019, when they were 5th graders, they had 47%. Then last year, the 8th graders then were 26, and then the 23 8th graders were 30%. So the group that was 2019 would have been 2022. So you can't really, it's 47 to 26, and then a new group of students for 23. And you can compare that to the state percentage average of 18% passing. For our 5th grade, they hadn't taken the assessment yet, but you can see that the 5th graders in 2022 were very similar to how the 5th graders in 2023 performed, and significantly above the state, but nowhere near where we need to be, nowhere near where I would like to be for science. So this is definitely a focus area. I'm not going to go over this data, but I did include it so that if you want to look at the percentages of the number of students, or the percentage of students that performed in each area from not proficient all the way up to exceeding proficiency, here's the raw data to look at, so you'll have that opportunity. What we want to see is low in the red and orange, and moving up, you want to see the highest levels in the greens. But I did just share that data with you, the percentage proficiencies. Same for math. And then for science. Science is interesting to look at. It does follow an interesting pattern between the grades, where we're seeing the lowest at the ones then 2 and 3s seem to be about the same, and then going down with exceeding. So we're really working at moving those students. For the science test, it needs to be either a 3 or a 4. There is no 5. The elementary comparison, so looking at all of the pieces of data for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade across both schools, you can see the comparison between Lakeview and Riverview. 3rd grade, you can see that it's really interesting because it really depended on the grade. So for 3rd grade, for ELA, you'll see that Lakeview had a proficiency of 74% and Riverview 65. And then you go to the next grade and you have 69% proficiency at Lakeview and 81% for Riverview. And then back to 84% and 77. So it's difficult to say that it's curriculum. I think that this information is indicative of a cohort of students and how they perform. So it's good to keep in mind, but I think that the reason it's changing back and forth is not because there's a difference between the curriculum between the two schools or the teaching style between the two schools. I really think that is indicative of how students are performing in those two schools. Math, you can see the same pattern where you had 73% and then 70 for Riverview. That was closer. But then when you got to 4th grade, 47% for Lakeview and 60% for Riverview, higher again. For science, very close, 48 and 44%. This is the cohort that we could try to follow from 2019. So you can compare how did that group do before the pandemic and how are they doing now. The only groups that we have left in our building that were here and tested in 2019 are the red and the yellow. Can't see that. If you follow the elementary pattern, we're pretty close to back to where we were before the pandemic. Not quite there in math yet, and not quite there at the middle school. So in the time that since the pandemic, the standards have changed at middle school, so that it could be one factor. But I know that we have now changed to a new curriculum. I'd like to see those numbers back up to where they were prior to the pandemic. Now, I'm not going to go over all of these. Again, this is raw data. It breaks out by race. And so you can look at each grade span plus all grades. We have very low numbers in some of these categories. We have less than 10 students. So that's why the data is not presenting. But what it does tell me when I analyzed all of that is that we really do not have any significant difference in any by race, right? So any particular cohort of whether it's the grade span of 3 to 5 or 6 to 8, we don't really see a difference in student performance by race. It's also really difficult to compare because the numbers are so significantly different, where you have less than 10 students of one group and then you have 160 students of another group. It's really difficult to have a few students indicate whether or not there are equity issues or differences. So for me, it's really just an interesting slide and you can look at the data, but I don't see anything that's standing out where we would need to make changes at this time. And then same thing is for math and same thing is for science. I will share this data because we do have about 50% female and 50% male. So it is interesting to see because they're equal numbers. You can do a comparison, and it's interesting to see how similar our students are between males and females. So this is for ELA. So as far as not proficient or just partially proficient, we do have similarly low numbers, and then nearing proficiency. It's almost the same for number of proficient, and then the exceeds is a little lower on male and ELA. For math, it's almost exactly the same between males and females. And for science, we noticed that our males are doing a few percentage points higher, exceeding the same percentage exactly, but our males are getting more proficient, and we had more females that were in the partially proficient in this area. So it's something to note. Then we look at each of the subgroups by program. Again, it's very difficult to do the comparison because some of these numbers are as low as 3. They're suppressed, but there's only like 3 students. So to use that number as an indicator of how well a subgroup is doing, this is not very helpful information. It's something to look at, and I will kind of flip through these slides. The one subgroup that I think we can and we do have enough data for is our special education population. And so I put together some very useful information across programs. One moment. I did contact because I also said that there was a mistake because we had 55 the year before, and I know their number now. So that was another reason that this information is not correct. So I did give all of the data to Cindy to count, to look through, and to state. I said there's nothing they said they would do, but next year we just have to make sure that we just have to continue to make sure our NJ Smart number is accurate. I mean, we have it in NJ Smart. It did not pick all of those students. Now, some of those students are K to 2, so they wouldn't be counted because they're not tested. But I still think there are more than 10. Yeah, that's K3 through 8. So it takes out K to 2, but I know that that's still higher because I went back but it doesn't, but K to 2 don't test, so they won't include them. But it's still, yes, I do. Yes. I did make note and I did contact to see why the numbers weren't matching when I got that, because the other numbers do match. I'm not sure on that one, but we went back to Genesis today. I said, is everybody marked correctly? You'll also notice that the state decided to withhold all of the gifted and talented numbers, which I really like to see. So we don't have that breakout by group. I'm not sure why, but this is the first year that they have suppressed that. Mm-hmm. So I went through all of our data for our subgroup of students that have IEPs. So our 3 through 5, we had 156 that were tested. And then you can see across in ELA how they fared in each of the categories. I will note that in 2023, what the difference was. So we had a few more students that tested in this category. The good news is that the areas that you want to go down are not meeting and partially meeting. The areas you want to go up are meeting expectations and exceeding. So if you look across that data, our students, the percentage of students in that category, so these are the same students, but how they did in 22, we had fewer kids that were in the lower categories, which means those students moved up. So they are higher in approaching, which means some of those students that were in not meeting and partially have now moved up to approaching. So we're getting closer. And then we have a little bit lower in meeting, but that could be because we also moved 5% up to exceeding. So students are moving the correct direction. For 6th through 8th grade, if you do the comparison, we had more students in the not meeting, but the other category, partially it went down and the approaching went up. So that does mean that some of our students are moving to the approaching, or some of our meeting expectation students moved into the approaching. So that 6th to 8th grade is somewhere we have to concentrate, as opposed to the all positive numbers in the 3 through 5. Same type of information, but for math. You'll notice that our partially meeting went down, which is good, and our meeting expectations went up as well as our exceeding. So we had what 6%, 5%, 6% increase between those two categories, and then 6 through 8 for math, the not meeting went down by a lot, by 12%, and the partially meeting and approaching and the meeting all went up, which we're moving kids from those lowest categories of not meeting expectations to moving them into the higher. And that's our goal. That's progress. So some of the highlights. So our ELA scores are at similar or rebounding closer to our 2019 achievement. We had an increase in percentage of students scoring a 5, which is great because we want to keep moving our students that are being proficient. We don't want to be just okay with being proficient. We want them to be exceeding. And in these cohorts, so that means following the same kids, our current fourth graders had an 18% increase in ELA from third to fourth. Our current fifth graders had a 9% increase, and our seventh grade cohort had an increase, a 30% increase from 16 to 46%, which is huge. We had a decrease in the percentage of students scoring 1 and 2 in those lowest categories. Our fourth grade cohort decreased from 22% to 8%, and only 1% were ones. It's excellent. Our males and our females have similar achievement data. We had a significant increase in proficiency rate in the focus grades. So as I mentioned, we're using that different intervention coaching style and working intensively with third and sixth grade. And our year-over-year comparison, our third grade, so this is really a measure of our teacher performance, went from 55% to 72. Our sixth grade went from 44 to 62. 28% point difference between district and state performance in ELA. And in our math focus on third and sixth also had a significant increase in just proficiency rates. We implemented more individualized assessments and programs to address student needs, and the achievement gap between students with IEPs and those without have reduced, not as much as we want. We want to continue. I mean, we know that this gap exists, and we just have to keep pounding away and reduce that gap until there is no difference between those two groups. Our areas of focus, we need to continue with the math proficiency. We are moving in the right direction, but we still have a ways to go. And we need to see numbers in the 85% and higher is what we would like to see. Science proficiency, clearly it's a problem all over the state, but that's not acceptable for us. We need to be much higher than 45%. The consistency in our math scores, so we have some grades that are scoring 30% increases and some grades that are not. So we have to make sure that the same strategies that our coach is implementing is happening at every grade level. And then we are going to continue to close those gaps. I won't of them, but this is a list of all of the interventions that we're doing to make a difference. But I will tell you that the one of all of the things that we've been doing, the one that seems the most impactful has been this intensive math coaching model, and that seems to be really working well. We're still continuing with all the other models. We did apply for the high intensity tutoring grant. We still have not heard back. That's $115,000 to provide 3 additional intervention teachers to come into our schools and work with select students every day. So 4 hours in each school, 5 days a week would be incredible to have that additional support. So hoping to hear from that soon, but that's probably the other item that is new. We are going, this year we're piloting our new math program in the middle school. We will be adopting new math program for next year. And also this year is the first year of our new science program in the middle school. So I'm really hoping for some stronger results. And we are in the process of reviewing science materials for K through 5 because it is their adoption year next year. And this concludes the NGSLA report. We'll take any questions.
Great, thank you. So yes, I'll open it up for any board member questions. We can start, whoever wants to go first. We have an immediate question.
Yes, I can.
Go ahead, you want to?
Just on the grant, just on the grant, is that specifically on science or math or just across the board?
It can be used anywhere. It's primarily targeted for third and fourth grade, but you can use it in any area. We are targeting math, and if you have the majority of your students in third and fourth grade, you can use the tutoring for other grades too. So we're targeting third and fourth, but we'd be also using some small groups in middle school and fifth grade.
Is it safe to assume the intensive math coaching 3, 6, 4, 7 next year will be 5, 8? So we're just following those students over time, right?
That is correct.
Is there a plan to then recycle, go back to 3, 6, or we're gonna?
I think we just have to analyze, because what we have done at each grade level is that we're doing some innovative things, some things that no other group is doing. And we're going to see if this works. Like, for example, fourth grade, usually fourth grade fractions are taught about 2 weeks before the test. And the test has significant amount of fractions, and they haven't had a time to really grasp a partial number. So this year we flipped the curriculum and we're starting with fractions to give the students an entire year to try to understand what a partial number is before they're expected to answer multiple questions on it. So that year is really spent changing the curriculum, changing the order of the lessons, and even taking lessons out and putting new ones in, and also spending every day in the classroom with that grade level, the coach, really side by side coaching, sometimes teaching the class, sometimes just, whispering in. We call it the whisper method, is when you're standing next to the teacher and you're telling them, hey, try this. So that is going to follow those grades. Now, at the end of this cycle, if we have to go back, we will. If we feel like we have to do something else, we will do that too.
So the purpose is to change the curriculum.
We're changing as we're modifying. It's not necessarily that we're cutting anything, but we're definitely moving everything around and reducing some of the time that's spent on some of the not the primary standards, but some of the secondary standards. So it may go back to the third grade and see, okay, where are we now? What do we still have to do differently? But because she's spending so much time in the classrooms, we were meeting with just every grade level every year, and you just can't get the kind of intensive work done with so many grades. So this worked. I really hope this is indicative of what we're going to see again this year. I mean, because it was significant in 1 year.
Just to follow up Ms. Idalis' question, I guess the question I also heard was, is the intensive training ultimately looking at the curriculum and giving the teachers the tools so that next year, if they're not coming back to that grade, they're going to sort of follow that similar intensive coaching so that those future third graders would get that training or that type of education?
So the third grade teachers. So if they didn't teach third grade again, I mean, the strategies are similar, but it is very content focused. So we do very minimal movement between the grades of teachers right now, at least between 3 and 5.
So they'll have the tools that they learned from the intensive coaching, and then they would then continue that curriculum for future third grade classes.
Yes. So the third and sixth grade are doing exactly what they learned last year. So all those things are in place this year. And now fourth and seventh are kind of working at it day by day, staying ahead of the students, making changes. They came in over the summer and worked on it. And then 5 and 8 will be next year.
Sandy, thanks for the presentation. I always appreciate the amount of work you put into the data. There's a lot of it, right? And I appreciate it. Can you go back to slide 2 for a second? I just want to ask a couple questions on a couple slides I saw. Sorry, I'm asking you to go back 50 slides. So slide 2 here, looking at 7th, or actually probably more specifically 8th grade math, what the heck happened?
Well, this is up. If you remember last year, we had 9% for eighth grade. So 21%, I'm sorry, last year was 14%. 21% is up. We actually, 14 more kids passed than they did the year before because this is against the state, right? You're comparing the state. This is taking out algebra and geometry students. So the pattern, and unfortunately, this is the same pattern we had even before the pandemic. Starting at third grade, our highest, and then every year, as the concepts get harder and harder, we lose a few more. A few more students slip out of proficiency and into partially proficient.
So if you go to the next slide, 2 slides, yeah, sorry. So where does that match in this cohort? Because I see 39% for eighth grade in math meeting proficiency.
Those students are gone. So those students that got that
So
18.
where's that 21% in here? That's what I'm trying to understand.
It's because, okay, that's a good question. So the 7th grade includes the kids who took algebra or took the pre-algebra there because they have to still take that test. So I had to include them again. I took them, they're in algebra now. So I had to count their algebra scores. So that's why that's higher. They don't take the 8th grade math test. Because in 7th grade, they took the pre-algebra and they are included in that 41%. I then wanted the same exact students to be counted. So I had to use their algebra score because they took algebra as the 8th grader and the kids who took 8th grade math. So that's why it's 39.
So I think that's the confusing part. We're trying to look at cohorts, to me at least. And I know I'm only looking at a piece of the data.
It's
You've
the
got a lot
same
more.
kids. The only kids that aren't in there are, well, because the geometry kids are gone because nobody took geometry as a 7th grader. So some kids took pre-algebra and then went into algebra. So if I didn't, so that my choice is I could either present it this way or I cannot include the 7th grade cohort because it wouldn't be the same kids if I don't include their algebra score.
Okay.
But 8th grade math is our lowest. It's up though. I mean, that's up, which it doesn't seem like that's a lot, but we cheered at every student because we have a wall and we circle and they are not real kids, but we have pictures of fictional children because we count everybody and we're like, there's 14 last year when we got 25. We're like, we got some more. So we are moving kids. It's very difficult. If you think about if they are having difficulty proficiency level all the way from 3rd, 4th, we're trying to catch them up. By 8th grade, they're doing algebra and this is hard. And it's really, we find this the most challenging is our 8th grade students who are not in algebra or geometry. It's
Okay.
tough, but we are working really hard on that particular group.
And on this same slide, can you talk to me about ELA meeting expectations, that 5th to 6th grade cohort, the one that dropped 10%? What's your feelings on that?
Well, I know that seems like a huge drop, but that's usually what happens. And this is a much of a smaller drop than usual. We usually have about a 20% drop from 5th to 6th grade because it's a new assessment. And it just always starts that it's a whole new group of standards, far more sophistication. The reading level, the writing level expectation is significantly higher. So it just always seems to grow until 5th grade. And then it drops back down in 6th grade and usually climbs all the way up in 8th grade. It's the highest. That's not what we saw this year. 7th grade was the highest, which was interesting because this is their first year of their new curriculum. That was the first time that they had done workshop. This year is the first time 8th grade will do workshop. They have not been tested yet.
So, but then the state drops about 4%, but you're saying 10 is good for us. That seems disparity, right? I mean, isn't that disparate? I mean, because if you go
Slide
back
are you
2
looking at?
slides to 2,
Well, I don't have a state cohort.
on slide 2 you do, but you
I
have
don't
the
have-
whole state for the grade, right? So if you look here and you look at 5th grade ELA meets 53, where you have the arrow, and then 6th grade is 49. I know it's not the same cohort, but you said generally it happens that same trend every year. So we can look at that trend and say it's a 4% drop across the state, but we're 10% and you think that's good, right? Am I missing something? It seems like we're dropping faster than the state from 5th to 6th grade.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. So you mean from 4th to 5th, because they
No,
went
5th to
53
6th.
to 49.
53 to 49. So the state drops 4%. You said generally it drops. We always drop.
It's true, because we have such a high percentage that are actually in the proficient and exceeding. If you notice the state, they're not in proficient and they don't have very many students in proficient and exceeding. So their drop would have to be, I mean, then you're talking about kids who are falling out of already being partial and going all the way down to not meeting, as opposed to students that are exceeding and then they go down to meeting, or meeting going down to partially. So it's not great, but it's the pattern we see. Now, I'm not happy about any drop, of course, and we're working really hard at getting the middle school to also have these kinds of numbers. I mean, we want everywhere to be 85 and above. But it's not, I mean, the year before when we saw 20%, now we only see 10%. It was better.
Okay. Do we have the capability of tracking our student cohorts into high school? Because that's all, like, it's really, really important if we could actually see that same student cohort as they graduate 8th grade and then go, and I know it's only going to be a partial, right? Because if you got it from MHRD, we'd have to, I'm wondering if we could just try to work with them on pulling that cohort only.
I could do ELA, because they do have to take ELA, but the only group I could get, I might be able to get our 8th grade core kids only, because they're the only ones that are still going to be taking tests. All of the kids that took algebra and geometry are done with NJSLA for taking those tests. So we wouldn't be able to get that, but I could get I think I could get the 8th grade, because I do get the grades. I track their grades all the way till they graduate. But we can I probably could get Nisha to.
Yeah, I mean, or
Dr.
some way
Zoller
to
to
track.
send it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not NJSLA, some way to be able to track, like, I mean, to
And
be
they
able
also
to
use
visualize
Linkit.
it.
They also use Linkit, and we use Linkit. So we probably could share data through that as well.
Okay.
I have even better data through Linkit, even more promising data than just the state data that after this B test in January, I will share year over year, that I think the kids are doing pretty well.
Okay, awesome. And then one more question, and then kind of just maybe a comment. So for the question, does Linkit give you a scatter plot that shows all students and how they individually progress throughout their NJSLA? Be kind of cool to look at and see where you see individuals kind of up and down. I don't know.
I can ask for that report. I'll see if they can do that. They have never sent us that. I can do it by the grade, but I have never done it over all, 5 years of testing. Now it's new. You can only do it for 2 years, but we could do that and see how that goes.
Okay. And then just appreciate all the focus you have put on different areas. I mean, I think you do a phenomenal job of finding the areas of opportunity and growth and kind of putting focus there. The one thing I would just say is I feel like maybe after you're on the board for, 9 years, I feel like just be careful as we focus in one area that we don't lose focus in other areas. Because I feel like at one point we were focusing on math, and then it was ELA, and now we're back to math. And so just whatever we have to do, I would say from a instruction and program standpoint that the board can support so that we don't lose focus in one area while we push another area. If that's something we need to find a resource for or whatever it might be, I would say bring it to us, because we don't want to see a loss in focus in one area while we're trying to push another area.
Absolutely. And I think our curriculum is solid. I do think that some turnover has been challenging for us. We've had a lot of leaves in the last 2 years, and it has been a challenge in the elementary to retrain everybody. I do think that's been an issue, but I really do appreciate that feedback, because just like right now, we're going after science. I mean, we're keeping up with the math, we're going to keep up with ELA, but we have got to, I know our kids can do far better. We just implemented, if you have a 5th grader, do we have anybody who has 5th graders now? So we implemented something new called the Science Challenge. And so I went through and I found every vocabulary term and concept in science they should have learned from 3rd to 5th, and came up with the definitions. And then we're going to be doing a lot with those this year, because if the students just to even have the language, I think they'll be able to do so much better on the math test. I mean, on the science test. It is a literary based test. So students that are struggling in language, in English and in reading find this very hard, not because it's the science, because it's the reading. But we're doing some great things to change that. I'm
Awesome.
excited
Thank
about
you.
that.
Great, Sandy. Thank you very much.
And we already volunteered the board to do it. Board against who's smarter than the fifth grade, who's
Yeah.
smarter than fifth graders.
All right, sounds good. Great. If nothing else, sure.
I'm sorry. I actually had some questions as well. I also want to echo Mr. Anderson's comments. First of all, I think the work that you've done, the work that the administration has done is phenomenal. The presentation is great. It's got a bunch of numbers, and I'm drooling over here. So, first of all, the work that you've done with the special ed is really it's very impressive. To see the improvement from the special ed, the cohorts or the students in special ed, and to see the improvement that they've had is great. So the work that you and the staff have done, even Ms. Johnson, or is it Dr. Johnson now, or Grace Johnson is amazing. No, okay, so sorry, Ms. Johnson. I do have some questions. The first question I had was that anecdotally, I've heard parents say that when their fifth graders jump to sixth grade, sometimes they're not as prepared. Is that something you've heard, and do you feel that like you've already put in steps to try to mitigate that or reduce that, if that is true in any way?
I think curriculum wise, they're prepared. You know, if they've learned the skills and they're proficient in grade before, the natural progression should lead them to the next grade. It's when we have gaps and they're already a little behind that makes it more challenging, because now you have a bigger bridge to sixth grade. But I do think that implementing the study skills program this year was, a big leap forward to try to really get kids on the right path for studying. I think there was, definitely during the pandemic, there was not as much focus on study skills because they were having to do so much virtually. And we were very concerned about their mental and emotional health. But I do think the push towards study skills is important, and that took place this year. So we'll see how that works out.
So the statistic that I'll be keeping an eye on for future presentations will be that fifth grade to sixth grade drop of 10%, of which you said that it was at 1.20%, which is extremely high from my thought process. But if we can shrink that percentage even further, then that probably could be a way of seeing if it grows, then maybe we do need some more effort or more attention towards those areas. Also alluding to slide 2 and 3 that Mr. Anderson had mentioned, the 8th grade math is something that is really jumping out at me as well. I mean, is there, you mentioned the intensive tutoring and all those other things. Is there thought to putting more focus on the 8th grade math and seeing if we can improve those numbers? And I guess that's my next question, is that, do we foresee that continuing? Because is it remnants of COVID? Is it, are there other things that are affecting that large or that such a small number?
No, this is not from COVID. I mean, COVID did not help because we were making gains in 2019, but this has always been our lowest group because it is definitely the hardest content. And if students are struggling with math, doing algebra is hard. It's really hard. And those particular students, we have implemented quite a few things for that group. And that's why I said every percentage point we get excited about, because we have some specialized curriculum that we've implemented that is solely focused on getting ready for algebra. We also have very small classes. We have more than one teacher in that class. We have virtual tutoring for them. We have lunchtime tutoring. We're now hopefully going to get this grant and be able to offer slots at Mathnasium as well as in the schools through that grant. So we are doing a lot in this area. It's just a huge hurdle. As you can see, I mean, the state's, no one is happy about 18% of the state of 8th graders who are not in algebra and geometry are not passing. I mean, or that's the only group that's passing. And 0% are exceeding. And we're barely above that. So we're seeing the same struggles that others are, and we're throwing a lot at them. It's the only way that we're going to overcome this is to start at the youngest levels, which is what we have done in the decade. And now we should start seeing, we better start seeing these waves, because we spent a lot of time over this last decade starting at kindergarten, because it's hard to fix in 7th and 8th grade, overcome a lot.
Yeah, I understand that.
And they
it's
aren't
not
all,
gonna-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments, and I understand it's not going to happen overnight. So yeah, we'll just have to be patient. Then I agree.
And I would break out for, I did last year because it was 2019 to 2022. I'll also break out those numbers. I'll provide it in maybe at INP, and you can get the minutes of how many of our students that have been here in our program. Because sometimes we do have quite a bit of gain of students from other districts in middle school. So they aren't necessarily our students that have gone through our program. So we usually gain about 5%. Last year we gained, when I compared from 2019, if they were here with us in 2019 and here with us still in 2022, every one of the math categories went up 5%. So
That'd be interesting to look at in general. But I think, and forgive me because there were quite a number of slides, but the raw numbers we're not in this, right? So I think when we're saying 21%, we're really looking at X amount of students, right? And then the 8th grade is then separated into 3 separate courses, right? It's the geometry and the
Correct.
algebra. So
correct.
and they're doing well because some children do very well in math. But I think, do you have that raw number? What the 25? You said 25 students total. Was that an actual number for?
That's the number that passed
out of. And when you say passed, you mean meeting expectations. That's,
a 4 or 5. Yep, that's considered proficient. If a student were not to, let's say in algebra, we had geometry, like 1 student, they have to retake that test. And same with algebra 1, because they do have to pass them. Even if they take the high school course here, they still have to meet the passing requirement for graduation.
Sure, that'd be great. Okay. We can, I'm sure we can circle back to this. We can also, a little more. It's gonna be a little more than 1, yeah. All right, well, Sandy, when you get that number, it's fine. I also, recommend that, in INP, the committee, I mean, I'm sure, you guys can delve into this more deeply. It'd be great. Okay, let's move on. Dr. Forte, I'm going to bring it back to you for your superintendent comments.
Thank you. Yes. Just a couple quick things. Veterans Day programs for everybody who's interested. We have Valley Views November 8 at 8 a.m., Lakeview's November 8 at 10 a.m., and Riverview November 7 at 9 a.m. Everybody get that? If they want to hear it again, I'll say it again. Riverview November 7, Lakeview November 8, and Valley View November 8. That's it for my comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Cullis, did you have anything in addition to that?
Just that number, 120 students.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And finally, Ms. Skorowski, anything from Business Administrator Office tonight?
No comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this point, we are up to our first public discussion section of the evening. These would be items that are related to our agenda. The terms and rules are laid out in the agenda, but basically, if you would like to speak tonight to the board, you can approach and give us your name and address for the record and speak about any item that we are considering tonight. We'll open up our first public comment at 8:40 p.m. Yeah, and for those online, if you would like to speak, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself to be recognized. All right. Seeing no one approach online or in person, I'm going to close our first public comment section at 8:41 p.m. And we will move on to old business action to be taken. Mr. Kim, could I ask you to move us through these items?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I motion that we approve Resolution 3A, which includes the reports for September 2023 Treasurer School Monies and Board Secretary. 3B is Education Reports, which is the student enrollment for September, the report of Health Office September, and HIB case VV 232401. And finally, 3C, which is the work session and executive session meeting minutes for September 11th, and the minutes for regular session, executive session for September 25th.
I'll second.
I think Mr. Dallas beat you out by a hair, Don. Any comments or questions on these items before we vote? All right, if not, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sedalis,
Yes.
Dr. Aruna Jatasan,
Yes to 3A and B, abstain from C.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello.
Yes. Okay, moving on to new business action to be taken. Dr. Moore, I'm going to ask you to move us through the personnel items this evening.
Sure. So I'd like to move the following resolutions under personnel. Under number 1, we have new hire, a non-certified nurse, new hire instructional aides, psychologist to develop counseling and social skills schedule for Lakeview School, teachers for after-school enrichment, leave replacement teacher for after-school enrichment, and a teacher for retroactive adjustment of salary, instructional aide for an increase in FTE, school nurse to assist during the student dance, part-time school nurse to assist during the school dance, director of maintenance and security, increase in FTE, teacher to increase to teach an extra period, school counselor extended from 12/1 to 12/22 of this year, bus driver for the kindergarten run, teacher for home instruction, several instructional aides for the after-school enrichment program and after-school clubs and activities, school nurse to provide nursing services for a particular student, behaviorist to complete the ABA program collaboration, instructional aide to assist with the book audit, and 2 individuals to assist with snow removal for the 23-24 school year as needed. Payroll assistant to BA payables, merit pay per work rules agreement, custodian cashing out sick days at retirement, and school nurse retroactive resignation. And we have item number 2, federal family medical leave and leave for a particular employee. On item number 3, we have job description revisions for school counselors, social worker, and psychologists. Item number 4 is the Morris Knowles students to observe at Riverview School. Item number 5 is the CJ Pride service agreement. And item number 6 is approval of the attached revised list of extracurricular assignments and stipends. Item number 7 is a DEA sidebar sidebar agreement for a particular employee. Item number 8 is mentor-mentee relationships, A and B at Lakeview. Item number 9 is the mentor-mentee fees for 23-24 school year. For someone, let's see, for A and B, mentees and mentors. Item number 10, to approve the new hire substitutes for the district, A, B, and C.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Moore. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Again, thank you, Dr. Moore. I know that was a lot. Appreciate it. Any comments or questions on these items? I actually have just one clarification. Number 1W, that merit pay, that pertains to the officer for the audit. Is that correct?
That is correct. Every year, we normally approve this merit pay right after the audit is approved.
Okay,
Mhm.
great. Thank you.
This new bus driver, it looks like you were able to find a new bus driver as well, or is this like a temporary bus driver? Letter N, as in Nancy.
This is a current bus driver moving up for the kindergarten run. We have a resignation during the last board meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Forte, for the item M with the school counselor, I'm assuming we haven't found, St. Clair's hasn't found anyone else for us yet?
That's correct. So we're going to extend her through the 2023 calendar year and revisit it soon to see if we're going to extend it longer.
Forgive my newness, but the CJ Pride, what is that? Is that a shared services agreement through the board?
CJ Pride is a group of districts. It's grown to a large number, around 100 districts now. It started in the Trenton area. Its main purpose, its actually sole purpose, is to try to help districts diversify their workforce.
Have we joined that before?
Yes, this is like the 3rd or 4th year. Yeah, we did it before the pandemic and then through the pandemic.
And just for transparency, I know because I think you believe you mentioned this maybe at the last meeting. We've had, I guess you would call it mixed results. It hasn't really necessarily generated a huge amount of diverse hiring for us. I know it's something you kind of reevaluating or evaluating.
I would say it's not mixed results. I would say we had zero benefit from it so far, except for, like, if you want to look at metrics, like actually helping us with candidates, we haven't had any. But when it comes to the ability to have these meetings with other people, listen to what other districts are doing, and hear some other ideas from around, that part of it's valuable. But if you want to go by how many candidates did we hire, none from any of these so far. And we've only interviewed less than 10 on the virtual. The majority of the candidates are from the Trenton area, even though it's expanded. So the majority of, and when I say Trenton, I mean like Central Jersey, say. So the majority of the people don't really want to move up to North Jersey. And if you think about it, if it's focused in the Central Jersey area, Trenton, Hamilton, that area, then you have people like further there, further south, Florence, Camden area, Cherry Hill, and not really viable candidates for us unless they were planning on moving here, a 2-hour drive. So we really haven't, like I said, we haven't gotten anywhere like with actual if I had to give you data on how much we've gained out of it. But there is another side of it that seems valuable, that we do get some PD opportunities, and we get some updates and some legal things, and some other pointers, some subcommittees. I'm on the legislative subcommittee, which is pretty good.
Anyone else? Okay. If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sedalis,
Yes.
Dr. Arunatatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello.
Yes. Okay, moving on to instruction and program. Mr. Anderson, can you move us through these items this evening?
Sure. If there are no objections, I'd like to move under B, instruction and program, items number 1 through 8 as a block.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Comments or questions on these INP items?
Yeah, I was just wondering if I could hear a little bit about the Valley View Green Team, item number 7. Just kind of curious about it.
The Valley View Green Team is a group that we have a stipends for. It's every year we approve them. We have a group of teachers that they're involved in like environmental green type initiatives. One of the things we do is get the green sustainability certification through the state. The town works with us. This is like a cooperative agreement. We just thought it would be good to put it on the agenda so that the board was aware of what's going on, is that the group is going to work with the Oaks and try to bring on some other people to try to help with the collection of plastic bags, to try to keep them out of the landfills. And what happens is it's a pretty large task, because you need 500 pounds of plastic bags. So you can imagine how much that is, right? And what we do, like if you have a garbage bag filled with garbage bags, it's only like a pound or something, right? So you need like 500 of these. So it's a pretty large task. But the good thing is, if we do get 500 of them, Trex will donate like a Trex, made out of Trex decking kind of material, a bench. We have a couple of them in the district, and they've donated. If we don't make it, you get a wind chimes. So we usually try to get the bench, but we have gotten the wind chimes a couple times too. So, but the good thing is, even 10 pounds of plastic bags get used for something else, I think it's a good use. And having another group help us with it, I think is important. It's nice because part of our strategic plan is dealing with the community and trying to get our kids to work with other civic organizations in town. So I think it's a pretty good opportunity for our kids to do that.
And this is
Thanks.
directly stemming from the discussion that Andrea brought up about the sustainable jersey. And then we spoke with the green teams, and they were looking for opportunities. So we took the feedback from the board and talked to the teams, and this is an opportunity that Valley View found.
Okay. Take a sec. We'll just take 1 second. I just want to take a quick look at something. I may want to abstain on an item. All right. If nothing else, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Adelis,
Yes, 1 through 7, abstaining from 8.
Dr. Arunadatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes, on all abstain on number 8.
Mr. Capello.
Yes on all, but I need to abstain on item number 2. All right, thank you very much. Moving on to policy revisions. We have some policy revisions for first reading tonight. Ms. Adelis, can I ask you to move us through these items?
So I move to approve the following resolutions under policy revisions for first reading of those policies as stated in the agenda as a block. There's no vote on that.
Should be yes.
It's just first reading.
Yep. I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Adelis. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, any question or discussion on any of these policies or regulations? Okay. All right, if there are no comments or questions on these, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Adelis,
Yes.
Dr. Arunadatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello.
Yes. Okay, moving on to finance. Mr. Kim, can I ask you to move us through finance this evening?
Sure. I motion that we approve D finance. Number 1 is the list of checks as found on the agenda. Number 2 is to approve the auditor's 2022-2023 annual comprehensive financial report. So, and the fact that they have no recommendations, congratulations to the administration. And number 3, to authorize the BA to dispose the equipment found on the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Thank you, Mr. Cass. Comments, questions on these items?
I'm disappointed there's no age of the item number 3. I always get excited when I see the disposable equipment.
So,
1985 VCR.
We couldn't identify it. It was too old.
Yeah, so old we can't even find the date.
Is it a CRT TV?
I think it's possible that the member who makes the most comments, we can have it delivered to your house.
I think it's actually a tablet, but not the tablet. I'm talking about the tablet like with a chisel.
We could put it in James's car right now.
Wouldn't it cost more to have it delivered to my house than?
You're delivering
I
it yourself.
would do that for free. And again, I just want to repeat, congratulations to Damaris and your office for, again, another outstanding financial report and audit. You know, we kind of come to expect them now, so, you know, you keep raising the bar. So exactly, so no, great job. Okay, if nothing else, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Adelis,
Yes.
Dr. Arunadatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
No on the milk fund, yes on everything else.
Mr. Capello.
Yes. Okay, moving on, operations. Mr. Cass, I'll ask you to move us through these.
I'm going to ask the board to approve items here under transportation and building and grounds. Starting with transportation, I'm asking the board to approve the following school bus emergency evacuation drill reports. We had Lakeview on September 20th. We had Riverview on October 3rd and Valley View on September 12th. Under building and grounds, I'm asking the board to approve the attached change order for American roof maintenance for the Riverview Elementary roof repair project in the amount of $9,750, and it'll be funded with maintenance reserve funds.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cass. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Any comments or questions? All right, if not, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Adelis,
Yes.
Dr. Aruna Jatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Capello.
Yes. Okay, that brings us to good of the cause. Committee reports, correspondence, our discussion items. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to create a student board representative, having a student represent their school or have an election within the school so that the students can come and speak directly to us as a representative. We were lucky enough to be at the New Jersey State Board Association conference last week, and I sat in on a civic engagement course. So I think it'd be a great opportunity for the students to come and speak their minds at a meeting, but also be a representative for their school.
I'd like to second that. I don't know if we need to formally formalize that resolution, or how do we want to formalize that resolution?
I don't know, that's why.
So, yeah, my suggestion was let's bring it to a committee, because I think one of the issues would be, are we talking about one for each school? Are we talking about one for the middle school? Kind of how would that work? So if you guys are amenable, I think we bring it through the committees and get a discussion going.
Would it be an IMP committee then?
I mean, probably, unless unless the administration has another suggestion for where it'd be a good spot to discuss it. But it sounds like IMP.
Yeah. Since I'm not part of IMP, the comments I'd like to make is that I think the elementary schools would be less interested. However, I do think Valley View would be the ideal. The other discussion would be to maybe include a high school representative as well, maybe from someone from Knowles. I know I had the fortune of seeing a high school student participate in our RSPE committee meetings that we had. So it was great to hear his feedback and some of the lessons he's learned from the middle school and how he's employing it into his high school. So I'd love to hear the results of that discussion.
So one thing I would ask, maybe if the committee could take a look and see what other K-8 districts do. I know at the high school level, it's pretty standard to have a high school student be a representative. I'd be curious to know what K-8s do. Is it a representative? Is it more a liaison? These are some questions I've been sussing out.
So then from a Roberts Rules standpoint, do we have to withdraw that motion then?
Yeah, it wasn't right, but yeah, what did you intend? Yeah, they did it. Yeah, right. But she did lead off. You did lead off with the motion. What was your intent? Was your intent to actually make a motion or to raise the subject and go to the cost? So,
well, she can withdraw the motion.
Are you okay withdrawing the motion?
I'm happy to withdraw my
Okay.
motion.
Are you okay?
I'm okay with withdrawing my second.
Okay.
And
So,
I'm an IMP, so, okay.
yes, we're going to have a discussion item that's going to be brought through committee. Thank you.
If I might just, Andrea mentioned New Jersey School Board meeting, workshops, I should say. I just want to thank the members that went down. I think we had a large contingency from the board that went down. It's a lot of commitment to take a few days out of your work and personal schedules. I want to congratulate Dr. Forte and Jerry Marinelli, who did a wonderful presentation on security. Dino and I had the opportunity to sit in on it and had several board members and other members that were there attending walk up and say how much they appreciated the presentation, how lucky we were as a district to have Dr. Forte and Jerry kind of representing us. So I thought it was a great meeting. I appreciate the feedback that you got. I love hearing that we already have some feedback of what you saw, and I know I've got stacks of notes I feel like I took while I was down there and still processing a lot of it. But I think it's always a great meeting. So for those of you who weren't able to make it, I encourage you in the future, but I understand it's a pretty big commitment to take out of your time. And I thank the five of us that were able to get down there. And Steve, thank you for taking the trip down with Jerry. And I'm trying to think who else was there. Susan? Yep. Thank you.
Yep, to follow up on that, I want to congratulate Dr. Forte, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Capello on their presentation on the strategic planning. So I thought everyone did a great job. I heard some great feedback as well. And the three of us was a peanut gallery, supporting you guys along. So great job on that presentation as well.
It is interesting. I mean, I think at least 9 years ago when I started on the board, there was never a thought of Denville presenting at New Jersey school boards. And not only did we have one workshop, but we had two sessions that were kind of led by the district. So I appreciate Dr. Forte's leadership and support on helping us out with those. And I hope it was beneficial to the audience. I think it was.
Thank you. It was good to be down there. And I also was asked to do the training for all new New Jersey superintendents and assistant superintendents for school security, which I did. There was about 90 people altogether.
It truly is amazing that when you go down and listen to the security presentations, the questions you get after the meeting. I mean, the meeting breaks and people are asking me, what's a class 3 officer? How did you build a security vestibule? Like, I mean, these questions that are truly ahead of the game on. Are we perfect? No, we're always looking for the next thing, as Dr. Forte said. But and then they struggle with things that we didn't struggle with, right? Like, hey, we can't afford to put all class 3 officers in. How did you get started? It's like, well, start with one. The things that I think we've done, and once again, we're not perfect, and I think there's districts that are doing other things that are either better or stuff that we can look at, but it is refreshing to see how much stuff that we do as a district that people are looking to us for. So it was really nice to see.
Meeting highlights. I have audit presentation, NJSLA presentation, and does anybody else have a third? Maybe the collaboration with the green team?
Mike votes for the TV. I think the green team's a good.
Okay, thanks. I got them.
Great. While we're on the subject, I do want to highlight, this kind of ties into two areas. Our space committee ad hoc committee, we had another meeting. We have another one in November. You'll notice coming up in December, we have the report out. This will be a report out at a public meeting, which I know has been bouncing around on social media. Mr. Kim has started to create a presentation, which I don't know what your feeling is about sharing it with the board when we feel we might be ready, or you might be ready for us to share it with the board, just with the board before the meeting. We don't have to have a date now, but I'd like to get it to everybody sometime before.
Yeah, well, we have our next meeting, that was the plan, was to finalize that, and then after that, I think there'll still be about a month in between our meeting and the board's meeting. Yeah.
Share it with the board internally before we do the public presentation.
Yeah, these slides are actually shared to the board as of today. And so just please note, board members, that that is a draft and it still has to be vetted by the committee, as well as additional content that we're going to add. So, but yes, the slides actually could be viewed by the rest of the board now, and they can track the progress of it as we go. So,
The draft is already in the board packet for the December meeting. But again, it's a draft. We're still going to work on it, and we have a meeting coming up. I think it's like the 16th or 17th, and then after that, it should be free to go.
Great. And if as you're reviewing any of this, if you have questions, you can direct them to any of the committee members or Steve, obviously. That it? Anything else good to the cause items? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. If nothing else. Oh, okay.
I-
I'm gonna take a
I
pause.
think it was, apologize, I think it was a couple weeks ago, but the Denville Education Foundation completed their golf outing. I don't think we had a meeting since then, right?
We did.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you to them for the incredible effort they put in. I think it was on Monday the 16th. They lucked out with some great weather, had a great outing and dinner. They're still kind of crunching the numbers and pulling in some final figures, but they should have some final numbers. But it was hugely successful again, and they obviously all that money will go to teacher and district grants. So appreciate their efforts. It's a huge job that they pulled together. They had 84 golfers and I think about 150 individuals come to the dinner.
That's great. Good. Glad it was a successful event back at the country club. That's good. Right. That's everybody. We're going to move on to our second open comments section of the evening. These are discuss any items of items that are germane to the district. Same rules apply. If you would like to speak, if you're here, you can just approach and give us your name and address for the record. If you're online, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand to be recognized. And we will open at 9:13 p.m. Okay, seeing no one approach in person and no one online, we'll go ahead and close the open public comment section. Also at 9:13 p.m., we do have need for an executive. Okay. Dr. Moore, could I ask you to move us into executive?
I'd like to move to convene executive session in accordance with Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act. The purpose of this closed session will be to discuss I'll just read it all. Negotiations, legal, security, and personnel issues. Minutes of this session will be made available to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
second.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Moore. Thank you, Mr. Kim. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we will be in executive at 9:14 p.m. and we do not anticipate any voting after. Thank you very much.